But it's my pleasure, and I don't want to keep everyone. My name's Mr. Garza. For those of you who don't know me, I am the college counselor here at Central, so I do everything college related. But because I don't want to, I'm not going to talk to you anymore because you guys are here to hear about the financial side of it, which is not my expertise at all. So that's why we ask someone. But fortunately for us, at DeSales University, one of our distinguished Central Catholic alums works in the financial office. And so we reached out, and she said she would be more than happy to come back home and present financial aid presentation. So I give you, without further ado, Maggie Sandher. All right, thank you.
I don't know if it's distinguished.
Yes.
But good evening, everybody. Thank you so much for coming out on this lovely evening. I hope you had a better ride-in than I did with all that traffic.
Yeah, that was awful.
Oh, gosh. But anyway, we're here for some fun information regarding financial aid. So how many of you are parents of a junior? Are any of you parents of a junior? Okay, so there's a couple of you, and the rest are the senior. Your children are seniors. Okay, so I mean, this information is applicable to all of you. But if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them at the end of the presentation. So the objective of my presentation is to help you understand the basics of financial aid. We're going to go through the application process, what to expect with that, what to expect in regards to the timeline, when you should start receiving information from different schools, what types of financial aid are out there, and then also how the financial aid packaging usually works with different schools. So a question had been posed to me earlier about, is there anything I can do early on to kind of practice or get an idea of how this whole process works? So one of the resources that I want to make available to you all is what's called the Fafsa Forecaster. This is available on the FAFSA site, fafsa.ed.gov. What it'll do is it'll ask you for information regarding your income, household information, things like that, and then it'll give you an idea as to what you can expect in regards to eligibility for federal aid. It'll tell you what and this term will be something that'll stick with you throughout this process. If you do file a FAFSA, your expected family contribution amount, which is what the result of the FAFSA is known as. So I would encourage, especially the parents of juniors that are here, to utilize this option because it's a great way to get your feet wet in this whole process. A great tool also that most colleges and universities offer. You know, I'm sure that your son or daughters are looking at different schools that are out there. When they're looking through the websites for these schools, most of them should have available for you to use what's called a net price calculator. And what that tool does is it allows you to enter, again, like your household information, income information, things like that, and it will tell you what you can expect to pay at that particular school. And again, as far as I know, most every school offers this option. So if you are looking at different schools, you are on their websites, make the effort to locate their net price calculator because it'll give you a good, idea as to what you may end up paying to attend. So the FAFSA form, or the free application for federal student aid. I want to stress the free part because I can't tell you how many parents I talk to that say, I just paid $75 to file my FAFSA, and it's like, the FAFSA is free. If you ever get to a site, and there are fake sites out there, so I just want to warn you, if there's a site that prompts you to make a payment before filing your FAFSA, get out of there, because the FAFSA is a free application. You should not be paying anything to file that. So be warned of that now. I do hear of families every year that say they get, I don't want to say swindled, but they get tricked into paying something to submit a form that isn't the FAFSA. So please be aware of that. When you go to file the FAFSA form, you will be prompted to enter in your federal student aid ID, which I would encourage you now early on to register for your federal student aid ID. This can be done at studentloans.gov. Both the student and parent must have a federal student aid ID. So I would encourage you to register for one of those ahead of time so you have it when you go to file your FAFSA form. Not only will it be used to file your FAFSA, but it'll also be used to access any of the federal student aid sites that are out there. So if your son or daughter may be taking advantage of the federal direct student loan program, They will use that federal student aid ID to access the websites for all of that information. So it is imperative that both the student and the parent obtain this federal student aid ID. So as most of you are probably aware, at least the senior parents, you've probably heard this already, the FAFSA for the 2020-2021 academic year was available as of October 1st of this year. And I don't know if any of you have ever filed a FAFSA before, but in recent years it's changed from looking at your income from a previous year to now looking at your income information from 2 years ago. So for those of you that will be filing your 2020-2021 FAFSA, they're going to be looking at your income information from 2018. So be prepared. I have a lot of families calling saying, I think I filled out the FAFSA wrong. They asked for my information from 2018. That can't be right. No, they're asking you for information from 2 years prior. So please be aware of that.
Well, we need our 2018 federal tax return.
You do, yes.
Okay.
But I will touch upon this later, but I'll just let you know now. When you go to file the FAFSA now, what's great is they've implemented a tool that's called the IRS Data Retrieval Tool. And what you can do is instead of having to worry about locating your previous tax returns, it'll actually link you up right up to the IRS site and transfer your tax information directly from the IRS into the FAFSA form. It'll save you all kinds of time, it'll save you a ton of grief, so I would encourage you when you go to file the FAFSA, it will prompt you to utilize this IRS data retrieval tool. And it'll save you a lot of hassle in the end to use that tool. So, and I'll touch upon again why it is important that you do utilize that tool. But so just to reassure you, there is an option where you can just directly transfer it onto your FAFSA form and don't have to worry about digging through and finding your own tax information. So once you file your FAFSA form, what happens next? You're able to list up to 10 schools on your FAFSA form. Any of the schools that you list on your FAFSA will receive your SAR, or student aid report, which will give the schools the information regarding your FAFSA result or your expected family contribution. And what we'll discuss is how schools use that result to determine financial aid eligibility for students. So I had mentioned on here about using the IRS data retrieval tool and saving you hassle in the long run. What a lot of schools do, and let me backtrack. When you file the FAFSA, there is the chance that you could be selected for what's called verification. And there are schools out there that will verify every FAFSA that comes through. So in order to make the process easier for you, I would encourage you again to use this IRS data retrieval tool option, because if you do randomly get selected for this process, or the school that you're interested in verifies every single FAFSA form, if you've used that data retrieval option, it'll save you from having to supply documentation to the schools that are requiring you to complete this.
Someone had mentioned though that not all of the information is populating over, like if you have a schedule. Someone had just mentioned that to me before, that you really need to check that all of this, like everything is transferred over.
In
You have
previous,
investments and all that kind of stuff.
well, that information, like regarding your current income, like investment information, checking savings account balances, asset information, and I'll get into this, that's all based off of your current situation, so you will manually put that in. But when they're looking for adjusted gross income information,
Okay.
taxes paid, that's all your, from previous years that will be transferred over from the IRS.
Well, I think what she's saying is that may not be transferring all the schedules.
The schedules,
If you
yeah.
file tax returns where you have schedules,
Schedules, yeah.
I think that's what she's saying.
Yeah, people are saying that that's not populating over, and that some people's applications, I guess maybe this year or something, or that people that are looking to file, that information hasn't populated.
In previous years, there were issues with not all the information transferring over. They've actually refined it now where we haven't had issues like that, at least this past year. And what I should warn you is once you do transfer your information over, they won't allow you to view what was transferred over, because they do not want you making changes to it. Because we had people that would use the data retrieval tool, but then they go in and make changes to it, which would then kind of defeat the whole purpose of using it. So, there were issues like that in the past where everything wasn't transferred over. Like I said, they have made great progress in fixing that. So, again, you could list up to 10 schools.
What happens if the year, the prior year, was an
they can do what's called a professional judgment, and they can say, okay, will you please supply us with your current income information, and we'll look at that, and we'll run it through and see what kind of impact it may have on your son or daughter's financial aid eligibility, and then they can make the judgment then to use your current information versus what was used 2 years ago. So, you know, don't lose sleep over this. If you're thinking, oh my gosh, 2018 was a great year for me, but you know, I'm honestly in a different financial situation now. Schools are open to working with you, and the thing with a lot of people is they're hesitant to reach out to the financial aid office, or they're afraid to because they don't understand the process. Have an open line of communication. Explain to them any changes in your financial situations. You know, they're willing to work with you. There is the chance where they would be able to substitute other information if your situation has changed. So, again, you can list up to 10 schools on your FAFSA form. You can, and I was explaining this earlier, if there are more than 10 schools that your son or daughter may be interested in, because there are students out there that like to apply to a whole lot of schools, once you make your initial submission, you can go back in and correct the FAFSA and add additional schools and then resubmit it so that those additional schools receive it. That doesn't mean that the previous 10 schools get it taken away, but you do have the opportunity to add more than 10 if need be. So, if the student is accepted to the school in which you submitted your FAFSA and you listed them on your FAFSA, those schools that the student's been accepted to, they have your FAFSA, they will then use that information and calculate your eligibility. I was talking before the presentation because there was a question that was posed about other applications that may be completed, you know, to determine financial aid eligibility. So besides the FAFSA form, there are some schools out there that may require you to complete additional applications in order to qualify for any institutional aid or any other aid that may be available. So one of the most common ones that schools may utilize is called the CSS profile. Now, when your son or daughter goes to apply to the school, usually they make you aware of the fact that you're going to need to complete this additional application. And this CSS profile is going to have a lot more detailed questions about, you know, your income, asset information, things like that. A lot of the schools that do require the CSS profile, they're not going to send you a financial aid package until that has been completed. So, but again, not all schools will require this, but for the ones that do, please make sure that you complete it. There actually is a fee, I believe, associated with the CSS profile. I think it's like $40 or $50. But then once you complete it, for any of the schools that require the CSS profile, it's already done. So be aware of that.
So do they notify the kids, like, it would be like in their portal, like, oh, you have to do CSS?
Well, I would assume when a student is accepted into a university, they have like a checklist then that says, make sure you do this, that, and the other. And I would guarantee they would have that CSS profile on there.
A lot of the schools, if you're using the Common App will tell you this is
What about
one of
the
the forms.
Coalition?
Coalition sometimes does. It doesn't do it for every school. But usually when you, like with the Coalition app, a lot of the schools will require you to create a username for their portal.
Like a portal.
That portal will
Okay.
tell you usually
Okay.
what is absolutely needed.
Okay.
So, yeah, be aware that you may need to complete that application for some schools. So what do the schools do with that information? Once they receive your FAFSA results and if they receive the CSS profile, what do they do with that information? So I mentioned earlier that the result of your FAFSA is known as your expected family contribution, or EFC. That's the amount that the FAFSA says, hey, this is what the Smith family is able to contribute towards their student's education, or their son or daughter's education. A lot of families are gonna look at that number and be like, are you kidding me? Because, you know, the FAFSA doesn't take into account a lot of different circumstances. They don't take into account your debt. They don't take into account, you know, all the different things that you have to pay for it. So it, you know, don't be startled by that number. You know, just when you receive that number, that doesn't mean that's what you're going to pay. You know, there are families that will get a 0 expected family contribution, and why maybe you're like, oh, this is great, I'm not gonna have to pay anything. That usually isn't the case, sadly. So don't take that number as Bible. It's not always accurate as to what you'll exactly be paying. But what they use that expected family contribution amount, they take that along with the cost of attendance of the school, and they use it to determine the student's financial need. So they'll take the cost of attendance which includes the direct costs, which are the costs that are billed to the student, which are tuition, technology fees, room and board, things of that nature. They'll compile that along with their indirect costs, which are costs that are not billed to you, but they build into their cost of attendance to give the students and families an idea of what other costs may be encumbered throughout the student's education, such as books and supplies, the student's commuting transportation costs, they have like a personal expense amount. So when you start to receive your financial aid packages and information regarding the school, they should have it broken out for you, what your direct costs are that you're billed and what your indirect costs are. But they combine that to determine what the cost of attendance is for a student. Then they subtract from that the expected family contribution amount or the FAFSA result, and that's how they come up with a student's financial need. And from there, they can determine what need-based aid the student may qualify for, or other institutional aid that they may be eligible for. So once all of that is determined, what types of financial aid can a student expect to receive? So there are grants and scholarships, which is the free money, everyone's favorite kind of aid. There are loans, which I'm sure you've all heard of. There are both federal and private options out there. And then there's also student employment, known as, some students may qualify for federal work study. I'm sure that is something that you may have heard of in the past. And some colleges even offer like an institutional employment if students may not qualify for that. So grants and scholarships are usually awards based on, the most common are the awards based on merit. So when a college receives an application from a student, they review their high school transcripts, any essays they may have submitted, and determine eligibility for merit aid. There are also, with the merit scholarships, and I'm sure you've already seen this now from looking at all the different schools, they range anywhere from, a couple $1,000s all the way up to full tuition. There are some schools that may set requirements in order for the student to maintain those or to keep those scholarships throughout their attendance at the university, like a specific GPA requirement, a requirement to stay in a club. There's all different sorts out there. Then there are other schools out there that don't have any requirements for you to keep those grants or scholarships. But that information will be communicated to you because it is mandated. Schools have to communicate to you the requirements in order for students to keep any grants or scholarships that they're going to be awarding. So along with merit awards, there's also the opportunity for students to receive need-based grants through colleges or universities. And going back to what I just explained earlier about determining a student's financial need, those types of awards are usually given to students who exhibit some sort of financial need. So sources of grants and scholarships, I just mentioned how grants can be awarded based on a student's financial need. There are state and federal grant programs. Now, the requirement to be considered for those is mainly your FAFSA form. So if you want to be considered for any federal or state grant programs, you have to have your FAFSA submitted. In order to qualify for those state or federal grants, you have to have a certain expected family contribution amount. So not everybody who files a FAFSA in the state of Pennsylvania is going to be getting a Pennsylvania state grant. And not everyone who files a FAFSA is going to be getting a federal grant. Usually it's students who have a lower expected family contribution amount. So for a federal grant, for example, you can mainly see eligibility for that grant for families that exhibit an expected family contribution amount of between 0 and around 5,000. State grant is a little bit more, their requirements are a little bit bigger, so it's usually between 0 and 12,000. But it is imperative that you submit your FAFSA form in order to be considered for any of those types of programs. There are also the opportunity for private scholarships from like outside organizations. There are a lot of scholarship search engines out there, and I would encourage you parents of seniors to start looking now because they get taken up fast. And I know it's been mentioned already as I was talking to some of you while you were here earlier, there's a lot of competition for them. There's not a lot available out there. They are there. I just had a conversation with one of our nursing students who has been trying to secure outside money to help pay her balance because as of the end of September, she still couldn't take care of her balance. She went on to one of the scholarship search engines and she found a scholarship out there from a sprinkler company and she wrote an essay on sprinklers and got a $5,000 scholarship. I mean, $5,000. So they're out there. You just need to make the effort to look. A lot of colleges and universities will have links to these search engines. So, you know, if there are colleges or universities that your son or daughter are very interested in, you're perusing through their websites, make sure, again, going back to that net price calculator, that's a great resource, and then looking for links to any outside scholarship opportunities. Also, too, you may not be aware of this, some of you should contact your employers. You know, some people are unaware that their employers may offer scholarships for, you know, dependents of their employees. I talk to a lot of families that are shocked to find that out. Any social clubs that you may be associated with, churches, things of that nature, it doesn't hurt to ask, you know? I always encourage families, I'm like, ask, don't be, you know, afraid to. I mean, ask the financial aid office. The biggest thing in this whole process is communication. So don't be afraid to ask questions or reach out for help. So kind of touch base on the different federal grant programs that exist. The most common federal grant out there is the federal Pell Grant. Now I had mentioned that there's a specific EFC range that students have to fall into to qualify for a federal grant. That correlates specifically with the Pell Grant. Students have to fall within that specific EFC range of between 0 and 5,000 to qualify for a portion of that Pell Grant. The Pell Grant is awarded on a sliding scale, so the closer your expected family contribution amount would be to 0, the more money you're going to get. The closer you are to 5,000, the less you're going to get. So if you're at 0, you're looking at getting $6,095 through the federal Pell Grant program. If you're at the higher end of the spectrum, you're looking at a minimum award of $700. And that was actually for 18-19. And I believe for 19-20, the maximum Pell Grant award was at $6,150, so it's gone up a little bit. The minimum, I think, was at $640. Another federal grant option that's out there is called the Supplemental Educational Opportunity Grant. Now, there's really no specific expected family contribution requirement for that type of grant. The way that grant works, it's called a campus-based award, meaning the government says to a school, hey, here's a bunch of money. We're giving you the discretion to decide which students can receive, you know, money from this grant. Most schools will determine or will decide to award that money to their more needy students because, you know, they're the ones struggling to pay their balances. But again, it varies from school to school. There's also the option for a teach grant. So not all schools participate in a teach grant. If you have a son or daughter that's interested in pursuing a degree in the education field, you know, this is something that you can look into. But again, not all schools participate in it. The thing with this teach grant too, and you have to be careful with some of these grant programs, this is a reason why you should always be reading what's being sent to you. This is one of those grants where if the student doesn't meet certain criteria, this grant could potentially turn into a loan. So again, it's very important that when you're being notified of any financial aid eligibility that your son or daughter may have, that you're reading all the fine print, you're understanding the terms of the awards, because you don't want to turn around and realize that something like a grant that you thought you had turned into a loan. It's very unfortunate. So the Pennsylvania State Grant Program, the main requirement for that is that you get your FAFSA filed by May 1st. So for those of you who have seniors, for the 2021 academic year, you want to ensure that your FAFSA gets submitted by May 1st of 2020 to be considered for the Pennsylvania State Grant Program. I had mentioned that there's specific expected family contribution requirements involved. So again, not every Pennsylvania resident is going to qualify for this, but I would encourage all of you to get the FAFSA in just so that you can be considered for it. And I listed some of the other requirements for it. And I just want to put this out there at the end of this. If you want me to email you my presentation, you can take my email down and I'll be more than happy to send it to you. And also, even if you're not interested in attending DeSales, I'll be more than happy to help you with whatever questions or concerns you may have. So just bear that in mind. So private scholarships, I had mentioned this earlier on, you know, definitely look at the different colleges' websites for search engines to be looking for outside scholarships. Talk to your high school guidance office for scholarship opportunities, contact school's financial aid office, and I already mentioned about employers are going into Oh, sorry, I thought you were answering. Okay, so everyone's favorite, student loans. I know. You know, it's definitely something that's discussed often anymore because it's, you know, becoming kind of a crisis. It's very sad, but as all of you are aware, you know, student loans are an award that must be repaid. There are a few different loan programs out there, the main one being the Federal Direct Loan Program, which students can be eligible to borrow through as long as they file their FAFSA form. So there's no specific loan application to borrow through the Federal Direct Loan Program. Well, there is an application through FAFSA, but people say, well, how do I get a subsidized or unsubsidized loan? I need to fill out an application for that. Your FAFSA is your application for that. So as long as you submit a FAFSA, the student should have eligibility to borrow through the Federal Direct Loan Program. Does anyone know the difference between subsidized and unsubsidized federal direct loans? So the subsidized loan is a need-based award that's awarded to students who exhibit financial need. And what it means is that loan will not accrue any interest while the student is enrolled in school. The unsubsidized loan is a non-need-based award, and that loan will accrue interest just like any other loan from the time the loan disperses. Student won't be required to make payment on it while they're in school. These loans are deferred until 6 months after they graduate. But when you get your award letter, try to understand the difference. Subsidized means no interest will accrue. Unsubsidized means interest will accrue. There may be some of you out there that may file your FAFSA and not get any subsidized eligibility. So just be aware of that. You may get all of your eligibility through an unsubsidized loan. But I would encourage you, if you have questions about it or you don't understand why you didn't qualify, again, communication's key. Contact the financial aid office to try to figure out why. There's also ACCHS loans, which are healthcare loans for students who are pursuing a degree like in nursing or healthcare. They are like the direct loans in that they can be deferred until 6 months after the student graduates. But not every school participates in this program, but if you have a son or daughter that are interested in pursuing a degree in the healthcare field, it doesn't hurt to ask if that's an option because, you know, if you're looking to finance your remaining balance at whatever school you end up going to, it's always better to exhaust your federal options before looking into alternatives. You're usually going to get a better rate through the direct loan program or the HHS program because it's a fixed interest rate. But I would encourage you to look into those options before exploring other ones that may be out there. There's also the Federal Direct Plus Loan or the Parent Plus Loan. Have any of you ever heard that loan? So the Federal Direct Parent Plus Loan is a loan that's in the parent's name only. So that's a loan that the parent takes out for the student. You can't transfer that loan to your son or daughter. That is going to remain in your name until that loan is paid off. So I'm warning you now, if that is not something that you're interested in, I wouldn't look into it because that is a loan that the parent will have for the life of the loan. The interest rate on that loan is currently fixed at 7.6%, and the government charges a 4% processing fee on that loan. It does work like the direct loans that the student receives, and that payment can be deferred until 6 months after the student graduates. But again, and I can't stress this enough, this will always remain in the parent's name, and some parents don't get that and are really upset when that loan comes into repayment and it can't be switched over to their son or daughter. So be aware of that. There's also the option to take out a private student loan. Now, some people may hear, oh, a private loan, I don't want to get into that. I feel like private loans, they get a bad rep sometimes. There are a lot of great private loan programs out there, and I would definitely encourage you to explore those options if you're going to need financing beyond what the government's going to offer you. There are private lenders out there that offer fixed and variable rates. Private lenders don't usually charge processing fees, which is nice. I mean, who wants to have to pay a fee to take a loan out? But they offer, what's great too with these private lenders, usually the student is the borrower of the loan, but I mean, usually students coming out of high school don't have much of a credit background, so they're going to need a cosigner. And who usually ends up having to cosign? A parent, another family member. And a lot of these private lenders offer what are called cosigner release options. So let's say you cosign on a loan for your son or daughter, and the loan eventually goes into repayment. As long as they make a certain amount of payments on time, usually it varies by lender, but it's usually a couple years. As long as they maintain those on-time payments for, it's usually between like 1 and 3 years, the cosigner can apply to be released from the loan. So then that's no longer your problem anymore. So I would encourage you to explore all options. Do not go on Facebook and ask for advice. Don't ask what your neighbor's doing. Don't ask what your cousin's doing. You need to do the research yourself and find out what's best for you. Because what's best for someone on Facebook or your neighbor, whomever, is not necessarily what's going to be what's best for you. So please do your research on these options and do what's best for your family. So I had already touched upon the federal direct loan program and the difference between the subsidized and unsubsidized loan. Each student is eligible for a set amount of subsidized and unsubsidized loan money when they file their FAFSA. So for example, for a student who's a freshman dependent student who filed their FAFSA, they're usually given eligibility of up to $5,500 in federal direct loan eligibility. Doesn't seem like a lot, but it definitely helps. And again, I would encourage you to utilize those funds before exploring other options that may be out there. As a student progresses on to the next grade level, that eligibility will increase. So $5,500 they may get as a freshman. As a sophomore, they'll be eligible for $6,500. And then as a junior or senior, they're eligible for $7,500 each year. If a parent decides to apply for a PLUS loan, and for whatever reason they should get denied for it, the government recognizes the student then as an independent student. So then they're eligible for an additional amount of direct loan money in their name as the student. So for example, you have a freshman and they get the $5,500, but then their parent decides, I'm going to apply for the PLUS loan, but they get denied for whatever reason. The government says, okay, well, we're going to recognize the student as an independent, so now they can get an extra amount of unsubsidized loan money, which as a freshman is around $4,000, so then they're eligible for $9,500. So be aware, if for whatever reason you get denied that PLUS loan, the student would then be eligible for additional direct loan money. The government charges a processing fee on this one as well, 1.059% processing fee. I know, it's like adding insult to injury, like really. But the interest rate is fixed at 4.53%. And I must say, with the federal direct loan program, the government is great with offering options in regards to lowering payments, deferring payments. You know, if a student comes out of college and they can't make payment on their student loan right away because they're not employed or they're not able to make the amount that their bill is, they can't pay that amount. They have a ton of lower payment options. They have a ton of deferment and forbearance options. So, they also offer loan forgiveness programs too. Which if you have questions about that, I can touch upon that later. But there's a lot of requirements that need to be met for that. Private loans are usually exempt from that, so it's always good to utilize these direct loans. Parent Plus loan, I mentioned this already. Again, it's always going to be in your name if you take it out. So I'm going to warn you. The amount that you can apply for can be for whatever the remaining cost of attendance is for the student. And then private loans, I touched upon this already. I had mentioned the direct loan program offers a lot of options for putting payments on hold or lowering payments if the student has problems making payment. While private lenders do offer some of those options, they aren't to the extent of the federal loan program. Like if someone decided they wanted to be in school forever, their federal loans could just be deferred forever. They'd never have to make a payment on it. I don't know who would want to do that, but I mean, they have a lot of different options out there. And I should mention with the private lenders, their loan programs are usually the same with repayment in terms of not having to make payment until 6 months after the student graduates. Although they do offer the option of, if you want to start making payment right away, you can, or if you want to make interest-only payments, you can. Usually they give you those options when you fill out the application for the loan. But there is the option available to defer payment until 6 months after the student graduates. So moving on to student employment, I mentioned the Federal Work-Study Program. Federal Work-Study Program is a need-based award. So most schools will only offer this option to students who exhibit some sort of financial need. There are schools, however, that have work-study programs that are for students who don't have any financial need. So I'm just going to use DeSales as an example. We have a federal work-study program for those students who exhibit financial need, but we also have a program for students who don't called institutional employment. They have all the same options as work-study. So students can earn money by working a job on campus. Usually, and this is what throws parents off a lot, when you receive your award letters, they're going to have that work-study award listed on there if you qualify. that amount is not usually deducted from your bill. Because since students would need to find a job on campus and work to earn that money's not given to them upfront, they're earning it. So usually that money is given directly to the student to use for personal expenses or whatever they want, beer for the weekend, you know, whatever they want to do. But, or they can save it, some students save it and use it for the next semester. You know, however you want to do it, but do not think that if you get work study that whatever award they give you is deducted from your bill. That's basically just saying, hey, they can earn up to this amount throughout the year with a job on campus. So, the minimum amount that schools are required to pay is minimum wage, which is $7.25 an hour. It's not a whole lot of money, but it's something. This is another one of those campus-based programs, and I had mentioned that term earlier. It means that schools get a pot of money and determine how much they want to give to students. So you may get award letters where some students are getting $2,000 in work study awards, some are getting $4,000. It can vary. So it's at the school's discretion how much they want to award. Any questions at all? But I just want to go back really quick. When you do receive your financial aid award letters, the government is now mandating that they have to break down each award to explain to you, like, this is a grant or scholarship. This is a loan that you're going to need to repay. You know, this is work study. So there is a lot of progress in educating families on how these financial aid awards work, because there's so much confusion with these awards. You know, again, there are grants out there that can turn into loans, and it's just, it gets to be very confusing. But what's nice is you should be in the cohort of people that are starting to see change and more push towards educating you on how these financial aid awards work. So what I would encourage you, parents of seniors, to do right now, try to get your FAFSA in as soon as possible. There's some schools out there that the sooner you get your FAFSA in, you're, you know, open to a bigger pot of money, because some schools will award those early filers with more money. And it's really simplified when you have this data retrieval tool option that I mentioned. It makes your lives a whole lot easier. But schools will not start sending out your financial aid packages until you usually have those pieces, the FAFSA done, the school's been accepted, and for those schools who have the requirement of the CSS profile, if that's not done, you're not going to start getting any award letters. I don't know if any of you parents of seniors, have any of you gotten financial aid packages? Have you filed FAFSAs, gotten anything yet? Usually the consensus among schools is usually late November, early December if the student has filed their FAFSA and been accepted to the university. So sooner you're filed, the sooner you're going to know. You know, I would encourage you, parents of seniors, to start doing that now if you can.
How hard is it to fill out that form? I went on the website and my eyes were popping out of my head. I'm gonna say that out loud, okay? I looked at it for maybe 30 seconds and then I just shut it down. So it looks really tedious.
It's not. I'm going to say it's not, though, especially with the implementation of the IRS data retrieval tool. That makes your life so much easier, because it just transfers everything directly over to you. Now, I will say when you're entering in like your asset information, things like that, you know, that can be tedious. And some schools, not all schools, you know, will hold you to that figure. They may request documentation to prove that that is in fact your asset information, or that is in fact you're checking your savings account balance. Not all are like that, but be prepared. So try to be as forthcoming as possible when you're reporting those figures.
So I did go on the website and I saw like there was two sections. It says student section and then parent section. So the student wouldn't be applying at this point, or is that for like established older students?
You mean in regards to the FAFSA form? Well, when you fill out the FAFSA form, it is the student information that's getting put in there. So if the parent's going on and filling out the FAFSA for the student, it should prompt you and tell you that when they're referring to you, they're referring to the student. So when you're filing, it is both the student and parent information on there. So, I mean, if it's the student doing it, it's just going to have the student log in using their FSA ID. If it's the parent, you click the parent side, it'll have the parent log in with their FSA ID.
Yeah,
So if you go on and you go to the parent side, it'll prompt the parent to put their federal student aid ID information in, but it'll tell you that when they're saying, you know, what is your name, your whatever, it's just
application, so it's either the student or the parent can do the application, or both of us needs to do it.
You should both be together doing it because in the end, both of you are gonna have to sign off on it. So it's gonna require at the end that the student enter their federal student aid ID information as well as the parent.
So bottom line, the student will know your family income, all those finances.
Well, I mentioned, if you use the data retrieval tool, when you transfer that information over, you're not able to view it because they don't want you making changes to it. So while they won't see that information, yeah, they could potentially see the asset information. But, I mentioned, you could enter all that in and then it's not until the end where those signatures required, that they really need to
So
do
they
that.
don't need to be there while we're doing that part of it.
They
Because
need to-
I understand her question, I don't want my kid
Yeah.
seeing
No, well,
the same
and that's
things,
fine,
yeah.
I mean, they don't have to be there for
Yeah,
that, a lot of
okay.
parents do, but at
Okay.
the end, they will need to submit their signature
Oh,
on
that's
it.
fine, yeah, okay,
Yeah.
all right.
If your child is, well, do both parents need IDs?
No, just one.
Just one.
How do 529 plans affect that?
So 529 plans are considered an asset of the parent, not the student, which is a good thing, because, assets in the parent's name are weighed less than assets of the student. So if you do have a 529 plan, you would report that as an asset of the parent. But it's not weighed as heavily as like your actual income information.
So there's no expectation of exhausting that 529 first before being eligible?
No, no. They don't say, their algorithm doesn't say, oh, they have this money in 529, that means they can contribute more.
So if you have 529 plans for multiple children, do you have to put them all?
No, just for whatever student you're filling the FAFSA.
Even though it's an asset, one of your assets, you don't have to list it as an asset.
You can list it as an asset for the student you're filling out the FAFSA for, because I think it's only looking at in correlation to what you're able to contribute for that student. I know it seems like it's a very daunting thing to do, but I promise it's not as bad as it seems. And please, like I said, communication is so key. If you have questions as you're filling it out, like I said, you can use me as a resource. I'm more than happy to help you. You should use financial aid offices as the colleges your son or daughter are interested in. We're here to help you. So please utilize us.
We don't even know if they're accepted at these colleges at this point. Doesn't matter.
You're
Doesn't matter.
prospective
So
students to them.
there's-
They want,
Okay,
they
I
want
get
you
it.
there.
Like, they don't even.
We're not, I would never turn away someone who's interested in DeSales if they have a question. No, they want you there, so they'll be more than willing to help you.
So if there's a new household, like the parents are divorced, it's still only one parent applies, or do they need both?
The way it works, that's a great question. The way it works in a situation with a divorce is the parent with whom the student resides with the majority of the time is the parent that will be listed on the FAFSA, so it's only one parent. And then if they were married, their spouse's information is also taken into consideration. However, it's like a split custody situation. It's the information of the parent that provides more than half the support for the student. So, no, it's only one parent. But again, if that parent is remarried, even though it's not the student's biological parent, they still will take into account their income.
So with that, just that question, does whomever's claiming the child in their tax return, is it that tax
No.
return that needs to be uploaded?
So it's whichever parent, so it doesn't matter which parent claims the student. The FAFSA is just very basic as whichever parent the student resides with more, that would be the parent, or if it's split, whichever parent provides more than half the support for the student, then that parent would be the one that's required to do it. So, I mean, it could be like a 50-50 situation and, there's one parent claiming it, but there's another parent paying support, so they're contributing more. It would be the parent that's contributing more than half the support. That's information we need to include. Any other questions?
So they have to be a senior to fill out the FAFSA, but that's not something you would ever do in your junior year.
No, it's because it's not really applicable. If you're a junior, use the Fafsa Forecaster. That's a great tool for you to use now. I mean, you can submit one, but I mean, it's not gonna do you any good, really.
So if you were submitting one now, you'd be using the taxes from 18 and 17.
Just 18. If you're doing it for don't lose the information. I mean, there's a recovery thing, but, you know, it takes a couple days because I have to verify everything, so. But use that Fafsa Forecaster, that's a great tool. And also the net price calculators of any schools that your son or daughter may be interested in. They're great resources for you.
Is it the same thought process with the scholarships? Like if we start mining for scholarships now, like the earlier you get in, the bigger pot kind of thing?
I would look specifically at the scholarship that's being offered because some are just saying it's applicable for the 2020-2021 academic year. Others may say, you know, it's for future, but mostly what you're going to see right now is for the upcoming 2020-2021.
Okay.
Any other questions? It's always the same face I see at the end of these presentations, like, oh God. The Fafsa Forecaster? That's the Fafsa Forecaster. Yeah, yeah.
What is the Common App?
The Common App is, it's an application that can be used by a big number of colleges. It's kind of like a one-stop place to apply for colleges. Only certain schools use the Common App, but it's the most common one, which is why it's called the Common App. The other one that comes out is the Coalition app. There's not as many schools that are on the Coalition app as the Common App, but that's just strictly for application process, applying to the schools.
Well, Godspeed. Best of luck to all of you. And I promise it's not as bad as it seems. Like I said, I'm here for you if you need anything. Even if you're not interested in DeSales, like I said, it doesn't matter. I'm happy to help. So.
I will make sure too that I'll make this PowerPoint available, so that way then if anybody, that way you don't have to worry about trying to email, or I'll make sure that it gets taken care of that way too. Like I saw some of you taking pictures of it. You don't have to strain your eyes trying to enlarge it, so. And then also too, right, we have emails. I'm gonna make sure that that's on, and we did videotape it, so if there's something that you missed and you wanna be able to go back and look at it, hopefully everything worked properly, but we know it's recorded, hopefully that the sound came through okay, so.
Sorry.